But when you've got a song and you think it's great, then in your own mind or whatever, put it up against some of the big artists and songs that you love. Would that take that off the radio and put your song on there?
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't, then maybe you don't have a great song.
Mm-hmm.
You got to work harder at it, Just because 10 of your friends love it doesn't mean it's going to catch the world on fire. So, just really work harder. And it's hard for me to describe because I don't write music, but, sometimes you think this great song, but then the chorus isn't that great, but the verse is great and the bridge section's great. Okay, well, one of the tricks is like, okay, we'll take that great verse and make that the chorus and now write another verse. Or vice versa. Maybe you got a great chorus and a horrible verse. We'll make that great chorus the verse and now write a greater chorus. There's ways of getting that song up there. So,
yeah, I think that's an important piece to when you're really trying to listen to your song objectively, not get tied into what sections are what, because sometimes it makes a ton of sense to swap them around and maybe your verse is your chorus or maybe your chorus is your verse and you need a new chorus. Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. All right, we have Mike Fraser here today, and Mike Fraser has recorded and mixed 6 ACDC records, including the new Power Up release. Mm-hmm. Other projects include Aerosmith, Metallica, Franz Ferdinand, Zach Brown, the Dave Grohl Sessions, Headley, Rush, Enter Shikari, Joe Satriani, Elvis Costello, Norah Jones, Mariana's Trench, Amen, Mother, and Cancer Bats. Thank you for joining us today, Mike.
Yeah, well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Sarah.
We've known each other for a minute.
Yeah. Long time. I practically saw you jump into this world.
Like, really seriously, probably knew me in diapers.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So as a little new baby when your mom brought you in. And that's when you started doing sessions. I mean, I remember you were, while you were walking, but, you went in.
3.
You're doing sessions and your cute little voice, but you were so articulate and it was pretty awesome.
I think I sounded like I smoked a pack a day and drank a fifth of Jack even at 3.
Yeah, it was great. Oh, yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it has. So tell us your story briefly for our listeners who might not know who you are. Tell us a bit about who you are, your journey in the biz, how you got where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. Sort of fast forward a bit, after I quit school in grade 9, my dad and I had our own sort of blogging truck company. Did that for a bit. I got bored with getting laid off for the winter. So I thought, well, what do I want to do? And I thought, well, I used to be in a garage band when I was in school, and I learned pretty quick I wasn't going to make any money playing guitar because I was not great. So started phoning around some studios. One of the first places I called was a place called Little Mountain Sound here in Vancouver. And they weren't hiring, but the guy says, if you want to come in, he says, we need a janitor. So I said, all right, well, it gets my foot in the door. So I went there, started sweeping floors and flipping the mints in the toilets and all that stuff. And I did that for about 6 or 8 months. In the meantime, I'd come in at 4 or 5 in the morning, do my janitor duties. And at that time, Little Mountain had a jingle company that owned a lot of it, Griffith, Gibson, and Ramsey, your dad's company. And,
yes, I'm familiar.
They were doing all jingles all day. And then usually around 5 o'clock, they'd shut the door. So I would do my janitor till 8 in the morning. Then I'd help set up the jingle sessions and help during the day. And then at 5, I'd be done, go home, come back in. And in the meantime, Bob Rock was an assistant engineer there at the time, started engineering things. So he'd come in at midnight or so. Well, no, he'd come in, probably 6 or 7. And he'd be doing all the punk bands, Vancouver punk bands. So I said, hey, Bob, do you want me to hang out and help you? He said, sure. So I ended up doing that. So because I'd worked till about 2 or 3 in the morning and have an hour sleep to get back to my janitor duties, I lived in the loading bay in a sleeping bag for about a year and a half. Did that. Slowly, I lost my janitor job because I wasn't very good at it because I was more into the music side. And then just over the years, I just worked my way up to be an assistant and to an engineer. And it's been a long, wild, great journey.
Yeah. That's, yeah. Well, and I mean, so many familiar places in that story to me, because that was, like you say, my dad's business was upstairs and they built Little Mountain and blah, blah, blah. But I did not know that you were sleeping in the loading bay.
Ghost and all.
Yep. Okay.
There'd be sometimes I'd wake up because I don't know whether the loading bay was cold one night or whatever, but I'd sometimes go and crash in the boardroom on the couch. I've woke up there a couple times in my sleeping bag, and the guys would all have their meeting there. They said, "Well, don't mind us, Mike. Sorry we woke you." They were so great, though. I mean, I've got to give them so much props for putting up with me and helping me along my way. That they were all pretty awesome people.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah.
So here on the Vocal Lab, we sort of aim to shine a light into the industry through the lens of what I know now that I wish I'd known then. So with that in mind, if you were starting your career over again, what would you do differently?
I'd go back to school and be a lawyer. They make all the money. I don't know, Sarah, if I do too much differently. It was sort of a long road because it was school of hard knocks. I didn't go to any of there wasn't really any audio schools around, and there's a lot around now. I think they help give the kids a leg up today because you kind of learn the basics. So I would maybe, do that or take a course so that I would maybe progress faster. But, with the School of Hard Knocks, it's a pretty good school. Because you learn the whys and why nots, whereas, when you're sort of taught in a school, you don't really know why you're doing it. You just know that that's what you're supposed to do. Then you get out in the real world and then you make your mistakes on somebody else's session. So it's, it's a yin and yang. I've been pretty blessed, pretty lucky through my career, being able to work with a lot of my sort of high school heroes, all the big bands, all the big Canadian bands and stuff. So, pretty blessed, but I think I should have probably gone to a school or something, got some help along the lines. I would have loved to have learned how to read music and play an instrument properly, because not too many rock sessions, but there's more sort of instrumental sessions that they're reading off a chart. Well, I can sort of read along, but I don't really know what they're talking about. So that would be really helpful too. Speaking with more of the musos, Yeah. So,
I think it's a great skill to have, and as it's not a make it or break it skill in this industry, but it's certainly helpful in certain circumstances to have that in your pocket.
Yeah.
So what's the flip side? What did you do right in your career that you wouldn't trade?
Well, I think in any career, whether it's in the industry, music industry or entertainment or in any industry, is just work hard. I worked really hard. I put in long hours. Those first years, it was like 20, 22-hour days.
Yeah.
There was one point, I think we did 6 days straight, no sleep. Just coffee and cigarettes. And I'm glad I did it. I wouldn't do it again, but it was an experience for sure. But, you just work hard and apply yourself. But, Sarah, when you really love what you're doing, it's not really work. So it's easy to put in those 18, 20-hour days. If you get over your exhaustion, it's not like, I'm at work today. I hate this. When do I get to go home? I didn't ever want to go home.
Yeah.
That was it. That was my life. It wasn't even a job anymore. It was my lifestyle. So I wouldn't trade that for a second,
Yeah, absolutely. So not asking so much specifically about names, although you're welcome to talk about that if you want, but more about just the relationships. What have been the most important relationships in your career?
Well, very early on, one of the main sort of jingle engineers, name was Roger Monk. He really sort of took me under his wing and taught me what a microphone was and what that did. Because, when I started there, I had no idea. They'd say, oh, well, set up a 57 on the drum kit or something. And I'll go, which one's the 57? I was clueless. So he was great, took me under his wing. He was a really great engineer. One of those kind of old school taught guys where as they're recording like they're mixing. So when they went to mix, they just put all the faders up straight and the mix was there. So, it was an art form that we've sort of lost. We just try and get things cleanly on tape and then worry about it later. At that time, they were trying to make it sound like a mix. So that was a really good lesson for me. And, Roger ended up teaching a lot of us, Bob Rock, who ended up going on, big famous producer now. So Roger was a really, really good influence on me. And then next would be Bob Rock. Him and I worked together for many years, did many records together. So he was a great mentor, as well as Bruce Fairbairn, who was a producer here in Vancouver. And Bruce, and one of the first projects Bruce produced was a band called Prism. And it was one of the first ones Bob engineered, and it was one of the first ones I assisted on. So the three of us sort of became a team for a while and did a whole bunch of band, the Loverboys, and they did Bon Jovi, and, it sort of exploded the scene in Vancouver. It was Bruce and Bob. So, between Roger, Bruce, and Bob, those are my three huge biggest influences, and I wouldn't be here without them for sure. Yeah.
You are obviously a pretty top tier guy in your field. And, so, I mean, you've actually sort of spoken to it just now, but, is there anything more that you want to flesh out around how you worked your way up in the industry and how you actually learned the skills that you use as an engineer and as a producer and as a mixer? And do you want to talk a little bit about how those skills overlap or intersect?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think one of the first main skills that I learned, was you have to learn how to hear. We all hear, we all do it, but we're not aware of what we hear, like I got to a point where you could say, sit in a busy, noisy, crowded restaurant, and you could pick out conversations 4 tables over, block out every other conversation and listen in on that one. And then, now you don't want to listen to that. You listen to that conversation. So it's a real art form, and you don't realize that your brain's capable of it until you train your ear to do it. So now when I listen to music, I can hear the whole song, but then I can ignore everything else and listen to the snare drum or listen to the kick drum, or is that third harmony out of tune in the vocals, or, so you got to sort of block everything out and then look at it all again and block everything out. So that's a really difficult skill. And I think when people say, oh boy, that guy's got great ears, it's only because you've taught yourself how to hear and block things out and not let things mask over, So that was probably one of the biggest skills. And that just takes time, sitting with, some great engineers and paying attention. You're not just there to plug in microphones. I just sat there and just watched and absorbed everything I could because I was so fascinated with it. But, that really helped implant, skills for later on, learning how to do that and why they would do that, certain thing, a miking technique or changing the EQ, why would they make the guitar sound brighter and not all dull, stuff like that. And it's just how things would mesh later in the mix, so you just learn all these things, but the main thing was learning how to listen, and as listening for pitch is a different thing. Some people they say have perfect pitch. I think it's just their ability to tune into where that pitch is. They've learned to hear that pitch, and that's a skill too. And I've found that, over the years, even my skill's been more honed on that. So now it's starts driving me nuts when I hear, they've got these programs called auto tune. So it computer tunes the vocal and it can make it absolutely in pitch. And it drives me nuts because human vocals aren't supposed to be completely in pitch, like
Agreed.
You're not a synthesizer. So
yeah,
there's some ebb and flow that's supposed to be there. So for me, when it's perfectly in pitch, it just doesn't sound right.
Yeah, I'm in that camp with you. I'm a much bigger fan of natural vocals, and I don't like the sound of stuff that's been really tuned hard.
Yeah.
If it's going to be tuned, I don't want to know that it's going to be tuned, that it's been tuned, and that's a skill. There are a few people who can sit behind that computer and do it in a way that you don't even, most of us, you would probably hear it, but most of us actually don't even hear that it's been tuned.
Yeah.
But it's become like that business of auto-tune has become like an instrument itself in a lot of genres of music where it is part of the sound of that genre. And I'm a much bigger fan of the natural.
Some of it sounds great as an effect. Like, I know Prince used it sometimes. There's that Cher song. I can't think of it right now, but
do you believe in life after love?
Yeah, like it does that in it. That was an effect, and I thought, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But when it becomes the norm, and everybody kind of is like, okay, no, I'm over it.
Yeah.
Funny, I heard something, and I can't remember. It was one of the great classic, like a Dean Martin or one of those old time things, and heard something come on the radio the other day, and listened to him like, wow, can that guy sing?
Yeah.
Like, his pitch was great. Like, he was hitting all the notes and then all the little weird steps sometimes in those melodies.
Mm-hmm.
He was hitting them all, not completely in tune, but it was great in tune. Like, and I'm just thinking, okay, that was all recorded on one mic, the whole band in the same room. He's up close to the vocal mic and the whole band's playing around him. And it was all basically live in the studio. So there's no helping or pitch correction or anything like that. That's how it was. And wow, it was amazing.
Yeah. Well, I think there's been a whole shift in music over the last, 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And music has tightened up so much.
Yeah.
As our recording technology has improved, it's given us so many more tools to tighten up. You listen to old Clapton records like Crosscut Saw and that kind of thing. And it's loose.
Yeah.
It is loose. And that's part of what makes it great.
Yeah.
If it was all super tightened up and played perfectly to a click and everything was just exactly lined up and done, everybody on their own independent tracks, it would not have the same heart that it has done the way it was done.
Yeah, exactly. When we do, or when I've worked with the ACDC guys, they've never used a click. They don't like using the click, and the click track is a metronome, keeps everything in time. Sometimes they'll find a tempo, we'll play a bit of click, so that's where it is. We'll turn the click off, then they count out and away they go. But what they do is they're so good as a band. Like, they'll play along and the verse will go along and it'll be a certain tempo. And then when they come into the chorus, it's got a bit of a speed up to it and it gets that angstness going.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the chorus, then it kind of settles back down into a verse again. So you feel the music relax a bit, but you don't perceive it as speeding up and slowing down. They do it in such a great way. The only way you can tell is if you take a verse and a chorus and kind of play them at the same time. Yeah. And they go, oh, yeah, they're different tempos, but you don't feel it within the song. And it just gives that song that ebb and flow thing. And that really helps their music. So when you listen to other older bands, say Clapton's and all that, you can hear that going on and it's part of the arrangement of the song.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it still happens from time to time now. I know there was a song that my brother did. I can't remember which tune it was. It might have been Toy Soldiers. It was on one of his, a couple records ago. Anyway, one of the Marianas Trench records. Yeah. And he did that, but because they do everything to a click, he had to program that, and he had to program the BPM. And it's, when that's programmed, it can't just be a hard shift from like one to the next. You have to also program in the ascension of that, and the speeding up and the slowing down, because it can't be abrupt.
Exactly. Or you feel it. And then even if it's, say, over 2 bars, sometimes you feel that. If it's a big change, you feel that. So now you've got to incorporate it over. But then by this point, it's got to be this tempo. It's probably more difficult to program that.
Yeah.
Than to just
do it.
Yeah.
Can you explain how an artist, a producer, an engineer, and a mixer all work successfully together on a project, and what sort of each of those roles looks like from your perspective?
Sure. Well, let's start with me. So an engineer. Do I start there? Sure. So the engineer sort of takes his direction from the producer, and the producer and the band have talked, and the artists have talked together and decided, say we're doing one song and they want this one song to sound like this and be like that. So then the producer says to me, okay, this is what we're going for. So then I technically go out there in the room and I put the microphones in all the instruments. Each instrument gets its own microphone on the bass and the kick drum and the snare and all that. So I've got, probably 30 microphones out there, and I get all the treble and bass on it, all the EQ and dialed up. Then we try and I get the slight blend going on it. And the producer go, yeah, that's exactly what we're looking for. Or, can we make the drums sound more roomy? So I've got to turn up some more room mics. We want the guitar to be more like this. So I do all the physical work. The producer sort of is the go-between between the band and what I'm doing. And then the producer helps guide the band to their vision. The band has a vision. The producer says, okay, we'll get there. And so the producer makes the decisions on the vocal. Okay, no, you're out of tune, you're out of time. Tell you what, let's try it like this. Why don't you take your headphones off? And, your pitch is funny with the headphones. Take your headphones off. Do it this way. Okay, drummer, we don't like this tempo. Can we play it a little faster? So the producer's more like, say, the movie director. So he's out there directing the traffic. I'm kind of like the cinematographer, so I'm the cameraman. So I'm capturing all the things, in my case, the audio, and the producer's directing it. And then the artist is the one, they've written a song, they've got the talent. Quite often as an engineer or a producer, we can't play or sing, and yet we're telling these guys what to do, but they've got the talent. So we're just there to kind of direct them. And personally, I think it's very important as a producer or an engineer is you're getting their vision, not necessarily your own vision. Now, sometimes they'll hire you because of your past work and say, hey, we like that sound you did on that record. Okay, I can help them go there. But unless they're using the same drummer, the same drum kit and all that, you're not going to get that same sound. But I can help you get your vision, So that's really engineer producers there to help the artist get their vision,
Yep.
So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So, and you've worked in various roles on various records, right? But you primarily work as an engineer?
Mostly an engineer, and I would say mostly a mixer. So a mix engineer is after everything's recorded and it's all on tape or in Pro Tools, and everything's got its individual little track, like kick drum, snare drum, vocals, guitar, all that. I take all these multiple tracks, and sometimes anywhere between 16 tracks, and I've had some up to 250 tracks. So it's like all these tracks, and I've got to blend that all down into a stereo track, and that's what you hear on your CD or your MP3 or whatever is a stereo track. So a mix engineer blends that all in, puts the effects on, reverb on the vocal or delays, and gets a nice blend so that hopefully it all sounds pleasing. So that's what a mix engineer does. So that's mostly what I do now. I still record a fair bit. I mix a lot. And then every once in a while I'll produce. Because I'm not a songwriter or I don't play anything, I tend to only try and produce bands that kind of have all that covered.
Yeah.
And I can just sort of overall say, yeah, no, that sounds great. I don't like the bit where you're going fiddle, fiddle, fiddle. Oh, you mean the A to the G? I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. That bit. So, I only like produce. I don't like getting over my head production because sometimes they'll look to me and go, well, that's not working. We need a new chorus. I'm like, okay, go write a chorus. I can't write it for you. Whereas sort of the David Fosters and that of the world are great at taking on. Great, we'll write you a chorus. Ding, 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 or your brother's great at that too. Like.
But I actually think that's a really important perspective, is that different producers come at it with different skills of their own and different ways of approaching that. And it's not all the same for every producer.
No, not at all. And I think a lot of the guys, like say the Bruce Fairburns, all that's basically all they do is produce. Those are the guys that really got their shit together. They can write. They know when that chorus isn't right or why it isn't right. That it needs to be bigger. We need to add some strings to that. We need to add or whatever. So the guys that just produce are like producers. So I rarely call myself a producer because I don't do it often, but I have done it for sure. Yeah.
So in your many, many roles, the many hats that you wear, what would you like artists to know before working with you? Like, what is the best way that they can prep for their time with you that will give the best final product? What's their responsibility versus your responsibility?
Well, number one is just write, and write some more, because really you're not getting anywhere in this world unless the song is amazing. And if the song's amazing, it doesn't really matter what you do to record it. It's going to be amazing. You could just do an acoustic guitar on a little microphone in your bedroom, and it's going to be awesome. It's down to the song. So, okay, now you've got your best songs. The next most important step before you come into the studio is learn your craft. If you're a piano player, guitar player, learn how to play that stuff so you can play it all through in one take and it really feels great. Even if you got to practice at home with a metronome or whatever, like just come into the studio prepared, because studios are expensive. So when you get in there, you don't want to be wasting time. Oh, shoot. Oh, I goofed that up again. Oh, I goofed that. Can we try another take? You want to go in there and basically, I like bands that come in there and can do most of it live and not do one instrument at a time, because that's time consuming. And then you do the drums first, and the bass players come in. Now he's got to sit there and follow the drums instead of being in the same room and eye contact. And it's easier to follow each other when you're playing, and your instruments need to be all in tune. You need to learn how to do that and keep them in tune. Just anything to make yourself sound great the whole time, and not have to worry about, can we edit the drums after we do this? Cause I can't play that very good. Well,
then pick a different part.
Learn how to do it good,
Yeah.
So those are two really important things. Just come prepared and have a great song.
Yeah. And that is a sentiment that I've heard echoed, from other producers and engineers. It's sort of the same thing over and over again. So listen up, folks.
And then, for me, like, everybody's got different musical tastes, and to me, what I like as a great song, somebody else might not like. But when you've got a song and you think it's great, then in your own mind or whatever, put it up against some of the big artists and songs that you love. And with that, take that off the radio and put your song on there. If it doesn't, then maybe you don't have a great song. You got to work harder at it, just because 10 of your friends love it doesn't mean it's going to catch the world on fire. So, just really work harder. And it's hard for me to describe because I don't write music, but, sometimes you think this great song, but then the chorus isn't that great, but the verse is great and the bridge section's great. Okay, well, one of the tricks is like, okay, we'll take that great verse and make that the chorus, and now write another verse. Or vice versa. Maybe you got a great chorus and a horrible verse. We'll make that great chorus the verse, and now write a greater chorus. There's ways of getting that song up there. So
Yeah, I think that's an important piece to when you're really trying to listen to your song objectively, not get tied into what sections are what, because sometimes it makes a ton of sense to swap them around, and maybe your verse is your chorus, or maybe your chorus is your verse and you need a new chorus, because your chorus needs to be the most killer part of the song. It needs to be the hookiest part of the song.
the payoff. And
yeah. So if you don't have that, then keep working.
Yeah. Exactly.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your process, how you prep before working with a band or artist? What does that process look like for you?
Well, say if I'm producing, because that's usually that's the biggest process, is I'll get them to send me all their songs. You know, they say, oh, we want to do like 10 songs on the record. I'm like, okay, well, how many do you have written? And if they've only got 10 written, I say, well, then write some more. But, you know, hopefully they've got like, say, 30 written. So I said, well, send them all to me. And, oh, we've got these 10 favorites. And well, send me all the songs. So I'll listen. And most of the time I'll agree, oh, yeah, those 10 are really good. But I really like this song, or I really hear something in this song. So I like to listen to all the songs, and I'll send them my favorites. And if we want 10 songs in the record, I usually say, let's record 12 to 14 songs or work through 12 to 14 songs. So once we've sort of picked our songs, or say our 12 songs, then I like to get together them in a rehearsal place. And depending on how those songs develop and how their playing ability is, sometimes we'll do that for a couple of weeks, you know, twice a week or 3 times a week. And we'll go in and they'll play it, rehearse it, play it all live. And say, okay, that's not really working. How about if you play this on the drums and try that? And so we go through all the songs like that. Through that process, sometimes those 14 songs will be down to 11 or 10 songs. Say, okay, we got another song before we go to the studio, just so we have extra songs if something doesn't quite happen in the studio. So once they're ready to go, then we come into the studio. And just because of budgets, you know, you used to block out a studio for, say, about 6 weeks to record a record. You can't afford that anymore. So what we do is,
you can buy a house with that now.
Yeah. So what we do now, or what I like to try and do, is get into a big studio with a nice room, like the warehouse or the armory or something like that. And, you know, but say 3 days to do your basic tracks. So basic tracks are basically your bass and drums and rhythm guitar. And I'd like to try and get the band to play all those live while we're doing it. So at the end of the day, we've got 10 or 11 songs with bass, drums, and all the basic guitars. Then we'll move to like a rehearsal studio or a small little studio somewhere where we can take more time. It's a lot cheaper rate, and do, you know, any guitar solos, any sort of other little bits, keyboards, whatever. And then the vocals. The vocals take the most. Most vocalists are, even if they're talented, they're challenged because, you know, it's a long day to be singing. If you're singing 6 or 8 hours, that's a long day. You know, most long shows are like an hour and a half or 2 hours. But, you know, in the studio, you're singing your heart out for 6 hours. Like,
there's a real piece of vocal fatigue there. And I will just say, like, I know I'm interrupting the flow of your story, but I say to my students all the time when they're prepping to go into the studio, talk to your producer and see if it's possible to schedule it so that you're doing vocals for like maximum 2 hours a day, so that maybe you're doing vocals and guitars in a day, so that you are spreading your vocals out as much as possible. You are going to get better vocal takes if you spread your vocals over a longer period of time than if you try and sing for 8 or 10 hours a day. You're going to blow your voice out.
Exactly.
That's the truth.
And I know I've said a few people to you, you know, for me, part of the singer's biggest prep is learning how to breathe properly. It's not even how to control the notes necessarily. It's just how to breathe. I know there's a couple that I've said to you, and they've sort of changed the whole way they're singing, because all of a sudden when they're breathing and singing from the diaphragm instead of from the throat or whatever, they go, I have way much more power. I can sing longer, and I'm not hoarse at the end of the day. Like, it's a really big thing. But for sure, I always try and, you know, nobody wants to sing first thing in the morning. So, okay, well, let's come in, let's do some guitar solos, some keyboards. Okay, you good to go after lunch? Okay, great, let's do that. Then I'll go back to something else or comp vocal, and then maybe even have a bit of a sing later on. Just because it's so time intensive, you end up having everything else done. It's like, oh, well, we still got 4 vocals to do.
Yeah.
So then you are doing all vocals all the time. And I try and spread out as much as I can, but sometimes just got to bite the bullet. And that's a long day. 6 hours or 8 hours is a super long day to be singing all day. Or they'll do the lead vocal and say, okay, now we got all these background vocals to do, and they're part of the background vocals. Yeah. So it's like they never get a break, you know? Yeah. And I've even found on singers too, like some of the thing and talking to some of these guys live, what they found is they'll go out on stage for an hour and a half and sing, and, you know, not so much anymore, but sometimes a smoky room, and that really bugs them. But it's after the show. They go to the meet and greets, and they're all the fans, and it's the 3 and 4 hours talking in a loud club because you're out talking. That does more damage to the vocal than them on stage singing.
100%. That is another piece that I actually talk to students about super regularly if they're prepping to go out on the road. Yeah. And that is because, let's face it, meet and greets are part of the job.
Yeah.
So, or if you're a younger band, going and working at the merch table where your fans can come and meet you and talk to you, those are all pieces of the job.
Yep.
And so you cannot escape them entirely. But the pointers there are be a better listener than talker.
Mm-hmm.
You can use a lot of body language in your communication and less voice. Let them do the talking. Fans, let me tell you, fans are more interested in being heard by you than you talking a lot to them.
Yeah.
That's the experience they want, is to feel heard by you.
Yeah.
So you can save a lot of your voice by asking a leading question and then letting them talk. Right.
Yeah. So what's your story?
yeah, exactly. And as much as possible, if you're the singer, as much as possible, sharing those talking duties with the rest of your band.
Yeah.
Those guys who don't have to sing all night, every night. And this is a discussion that has to happen before you go on the road. Okay, you guys, that's part of your job, because all of us depend on me being able to sing the shows.
Exactly. So
this is the piece you got to take.
Usually the lead singer is the Mr. Personality.
Exactly.
He's who everybody, the focus is, and everybody wants to talk to him. So when he's quiet in the background, and the drummer and the bass player, whoever else is doing all the talk, and then people go, oh, God, he's such a snob. Well, it's not that he's a snob. He's just trying to save his voice. You know, he might go to the meet and greet for the first 20 minutes. Say, okay, I got to go to bed. I got to get up for the next morning. Oh, how come he's such a snob? We're all going partying and all that.
I know.
Can't do it, but you know, that's just the reality sometimes.
It is. I don't know, somebody on here, I think it was Danny Craig, said, nothing good ever happens after 2 a.m. It's the truth.
That's right. Yeah. That's where all this gray hair came from.
Thanks for joining us today. That was actually just part 1 of our interview. And I would love it if you come on back Thursday to catch part 2. Can't wait to see you then.